excited to be here and be able to answer all of your questions throughout the next 30-ish minutes. So whatever questions you have, please put them in the chat on the YouTube live page and we will start getting through them. But to kick things off, we will do some introductions. So my name is Elizabeth Bernstein. I graduated last week from Northwestern, which is very weird to say, but here we are. I majored in neuroscience and minored in psychology, and I'm originally from New York City, and I'm super excited to be here today. So Melana, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Melana, and like Elizabeth, I just graduated last week too. I was a psych major with minors in Spanish and business institutions. So if you have any specific questions about that, I can be happy to answer those. But also we have some other great, current students here with us, like Ethan. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. My name's Ethan. I'm still a student. I've got one more year. I'm a rising fourth year, which is weird to say. I am from Glenview, Illinois, so pretty close to Evanston, and I study political science and history. So anything in that area, yeah. I guess if Alexis wants to finish it off.
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Alexis. I'm also a rising fourth year. Actually, Ethan and I lived together in the same dorm for our first 2 years. I study English literature and psychology, and when I'm not working in the admissions office, you'll see me as an exec member of NU World Cup. So back to Elizabeth.
Awesome. Thank you all. So like I said, please drop your questions into the chat so we can kick things off with our first question. So our first question is, how is the transition from high school to Northwestern? Alexis, do you want to answer this one for us?
Sure. So particular to me, I went to a small private school for high school. And I would say in some ways, like it was an experience of like a big fish in a small pond phenomena. And that's definitely not the case once you reach Northwestern, especially if you're somebody who like maybe breezed through all of high school. I know that that is the case for a lot of people who end up at like selective universities. I would say that the transition happens to you quickly. You'll meet a lot of really intelligent, really driven people once you get to Northwestern. And you'll be taking classes that you're passionate about, whatever it is, but where people are really, working to do their best. And that will embolden you to do your best, but it'll also show you that work ethic is important. And that you should get your study habits in order quickly, as I learned that quickly, probably my first quarter. It's a pleasant experience, the transition to college. You get freedoms, you like learn adulthood and stuff, but it also requires a little bit of work from you. But I think that if you're applying to Northwestern, you have the ability, so you'll be okay.
Awesome. I can totally second that sentiment. I definitely think that the transition is manageable, and Northwestern has a lot of different structures in place, like Wildcat Welcome and your peer advisors who help to make that transition as seamless as possible. But like Alexis was saying, it does take some time, and it does take just a little bit of patience and honestly just acclimation to a new environment and new classes and new people. And so my biggest advice on that would be to take it easy on yourself. Don't try to do way too much all at once. Know that this is a big transition period and that there is a lot of time at Northwestern to get things done. Our next question is, what is being a neuroscience major like? So I will be answering this one. I'm actually right now, I'm in my neuroscience t-shirt because I just moved. And so this is the only Northwestern shirt that I know the location of right now. But being a neuroscience major was great. I took a lot of introductory classes, so a lot of general chemistry and a lot of biology classes to get a really solid foundation in understanding what was eventually going to happen in my neuroscience classes. I really enjoyed the upper level electives. Northwestern Neuroscience has so many upper level electives to choose from. One that I took was development, and so how two cells come together to make a brain and make functioning people that are on this Zoom right now. And so that was really cool. And then I also took one about different systems, but overall, I think it is a great major and it is a pretty popular one, especially amongst students who are completing pre-med course requirements. So I would definitely recommend it. And I think that the faculty in the department are really great, really caring people. Cool. Our next question is, what have your experiences been like in regards to the intersection of psych and studying with other subjects and fields? So Melana, all you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think psychology at Northwestern is really interdisciplinary. There are a lot of classes that relate to other things. I know my roommate who's a pre-med, she took health psychology, which was really cool for her. We have a class called Buddhist psychology, which is the intersection, obviously, of religion and psychology. I took a class, I actually took a neuroscience class for my psychology major, so interacting with more of that hard science type thing. I'm also a business minor. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the term BIP. That's kind of in my name, but that's the business institutions minor. And with BIP, I actually took a class from a professor who teaches marketing. And she also teaches psychology courses too. So some of our electives for the business institutions program dealt with psychology too. So a lot of consumer psychology, and being able to kind of intersect those two disciplines was really interesting personally for me in my studies.
Awesome, thank you. And our next question kind of follows up about a little bit with that of what research projects have some of us done. So I will chat briefly about my research, and I think it goes to what Melana was saying about Northwestern being really interdisciplinary and a lot of different kind of subjects intersecting with each other, like she was just saying. And so for me, I did clinical research on orthopedic surgical outcomes in patients diagnosed with a pretty specific hereditary connective tissue disorder. And that was a really great opportunity for me to learn, but you can truly do research in any subject that you're interested in. It does not have to be STEM focused at all. You can do research in history or poli-sci or English lit, like Alexis is studying. And so any of those things that you may be interested in, Northwestern has really great support systems in place to allow students to get mentorship, figure out how to find the right professor to do research with, and also just kind of how to get research grants and all of those fun things. Our next question is, do students pursuing majors in two different colleges usually graduate in 4 years, or does it take longer? Ethan, would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, sure. So fun fact about me, I actually started my first year here in the School of Music. I switched into the College of Arts and Sciences afterwards, so I have a bit of experience with that whole area. So it kind of depends on what school or what program you're doing. We do have a program called the dual degree program where, and it's generally between the Beaton School of Music and one of the other schools, whether it's McCormick School of Engineering, the Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences, you name it. Those usually take 5 years. And then when you graduate, you'll have 2 degrees, one in each school. However, it's also really easy and really possible to just major in another school and still be able to easily graduate in 4 years. My first year roommate, Jacob, he is in the McCormick School of Engineering, studying material sciences engineering, which I know when I ever looked at his homework gave me a headache, but he's also a history major with me. So he takes history courses in the College of Arts and Sciences and is way on track to graduate within 4 years, if not a quarter early. So very much possible to do majors between multiple schools and graduate on time.
Yes, 100%. Our next question is about the overall environment at Northwestern. So are Northwestern students open to helping each other, or is it a more competitive / cutthroat environment? Alexis, talk to us about this from your experiences.
Sure. So I actually started off as pre-med, and then I picked up English as a second major after a year and a half at Northwestern. So I've had like what you would say are like the hard STEM course experience, and I also had like what more like a liberal arts education as well. And I can tell you that whether you're being graded on a curve or whether it's like, I don't know, subjective style grading, like if you're writing a paper, Northwestern is full of really collaborative people. I've met 0 people who are like really like cutthroat and mean. It's not a school where you'll find people like pulling at each other's heels to succeed. Which is probably one of my favorite things about Northwestern, honestly, is like the fact that you can go to like any classmate, make friends or whatever, and like get support for your classes, like whether it's like study partnering or like just like emotional support when like stuff is getting rough, you know, just knowing that other people are there for you is like really useful. and it makes those harder classes easier. And yeah, I would say overall people are really helpful and kind.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. From my experiences throughout all of pre-med as well, it has been somewhere that I've actually met a lot of my best friends, and it was a really great support system to have study groups and know all of the people in my classes, because if there was a topic I didn't understand, they would help me out, and same if it went the other way around. And so it really was a collaborative communal environment that really, I know I wanted all of my peers to succeed, and I think my peers felt the same way as well. So our next question is about the economics department and talking a little bit about what that program is like. So Melana, talk to us.
Yeah, so I don't study econ, but with the business institutions minor, we do take microeconomics and macroeconomics, and a lot of my friends are econ majors too. So from what I've experienced with the department and just what I've heard from my friends, it's a really cool program with really involved professors and faculty members. I think a really cool part about the econ department is the fact that we have Northwestern's Kellogg School of Business here. So a lot of students who are in the econ department will work with professors in Kellogg, or some, like one of my professors for my business minor was actually also a Kellogg professor. So being able to have that intersection with the grad school and have access to it. I also know I've been jealous of some of my econ friends who've been able to take really cool classes like behavioral economics. One of my friends took a class about sports and economics. Another one took transportation economics. So there are a lot of really cool opportunities within the economics department. I mean, I don't have all the answers for you, but I would encourage going onto the econ website. And there's also contact information for the department in general.
Jumping to Ethan, your experiences, talk to us about what it's like to study history.
Yeah, I absolutely love the history department here at Northwestern. I didn't take my first history course until middle of my second year. It was History of U.S. Foreign Relations. Probably still is my favorite course that I ever took at Northwestern. The history major is really open, and it lets you, there's a wide variety of courses, and it really lets you focus in on what you want. So you can either be a global history major and take courses from all across the globe, or you can focus in on an area. For example, I focus on American history. You have to take, you have to take, of course, a handful of courses in your history area, but also they want you to take history courses outside your area. So for example, I took a history course this past year called the History and Theory of Information, which was actually a course co-taught with a history professor and a communication studies professor, which looked at basically how people communicate across the globe, looking at the telegraph and television and radio, going all the way back to the printing press in the 1600s. I just really love the history department because the professors are amazing in it. It's a nice balance between letting you focus in on what area you want to focus in on to, but also giving you a well-rounded historical experience so you can learn about a lot of different areas.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, cool. Was not sure. So for our next question, Alexis, can you talk about some of the most memorable classes that you've taken at Northwestern?
Yeah, I can. I'll give one English one and one psych one just for the sake of concision. So I took last quarter, I took a class, it was a small seminar in psychology on child maltreatment. And it was essentially like we had a clinical, she was a clinician, the professor, right? And she took us actually to a preschool, and we observed like the development of kids. And it was such an interesting course because we learned so much about longitudinally what happens to you, the effects of what happens to you as a child, and how that makes you end up parenting, how that correlates to life outcomes. I mean, it was an incredible course. Big recommendation to anybody who can take it. And the professor's name is Professor Alyssa Levy-Chung. If you can take any classes with her, you'll be really happy. And then in English, that's a hard one. I took one class with Professor Jules Law, super amazing professor, also big recommendation on him. Took a class on Victorian literature, which had two of my favorite books, which is really, really cool. But what made it so amazing was that there were only 6 other people in the course besides me. So I built like a really strong relationship with him. He actually emailed me when COVID started and asked me how my family was doing. And we've built a good relationship, and having that 7-person class really fostered that kind of seminar style conversational class, and it made it really pleasant to show up. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Alexis. The next thing that we are going to talk about is, why did you originally want to go to Northwestern when applying, and what would you say now? So Melana, having just graduated, why don't you tell us about, in a reflective sense, I guess, a week post-grad, what you would say now and what you said then?
Yeah, so I remember coming to Northwestern for what we call Wildcat Days, which is for regular decision students to kind of get that accepted student stay type feel at Northwestern. And I came, I saw the campus, went on another tour, kind of met some other people who were deciding about Northwestern, and my family was driving away from Northwestern. This sounds really cheesy. Every time I tell this story, people think that I'm making something up. But my mom asked me how I was feeling about Northwestern, and I told her I felt like I could do anything and everything at Northwestern, because all of the resources that we have here with advising, with study abroad, with professional programs, with just academics, extracurriculars, like there's so many opportunities for you to take advantage of. And especially with the flexibility of the quarter system too, you really do have time to engage in what you want to do, and you have the support from not only faculty here, but also your peers. And so I guess that kind of goes into how I would reflect upon my time at Northwestern. And the main reason that I really do love it here are the people. I mean, that's what I've been seeing. Everyone's kind of posting their graduation pictures, and everyone's really saying the thing that they've gained mostly from their Northwestern experience are the amazing people. And so, I mean, having worked in the admissions office with Elizabeth and talking to some great people like Ethan and Alexis, you meet so many different people at Northwestern who are all really driven, who are all really collaborative, who are all really just amazing people. I really can't express it enough. So I would say coming into Northwestern, I was really drawn because of the opportunity here, and leaving Northwestern, I'm just so grateful for all the people that I've met.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So our next two questions I will address. So one of them is it competitive being a neuroscience major? And I would definitely say that this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, that Northwestern overall is a really collaborative that I was talking about, have overlap with neuroscience classes and neuroscience requirements. And as a whole, people genuinely want to help each other. So I wouldn't say that it's a competitive major necessarily. I would definitely say that some of the questions can be, or some of the classes can be very challenging for sure, whether that's organic chemistry or some of the different electives. There is quite a bit of anatomy to learn about the brain before you can really start to understand the systems that it has in place for all sorts of different things, but definitely not competitive. And then the other question is about what percentage of students get into med school immediately after undergrad. And so immediately after undergrad, there isn't a certain statistic just for that year, because a lot of students choose to take gap years, and it's actually becoming more and more popular for Northwestern students to take one gap year, take 2 gap years, or do a lot of different bridge experiences between undergrad and going straight into med school, especially with a lot of MCAT dates getting canceled for this testing season. I know a lot of folks who are going to be taking more time before they go to med school than originally planned, but the national average acceptance rate for medical schools is about 40%, and the Northwestern statistic, I believe, is about 90% of students with a GPA of 3.7 or higher will get into medical school. That might be slightly off, so do not quote me on that, but I believe that the statistic is right around there. Our next question is, how much time is spent on courses related to your major? So Ethan, do you want to talk about classes related to poli-sci history, and then also maybe some of the time you've spent on electives or on other interests of yours?
Yeah. As previously mentioned, the quarter system is really nice because it does give you the opportunity to take a wide variety of courses. Just compared to, people I know who are on semester school system, we take, 8, 10 more courses, and that's a whole nother minor right there. So, once I figured out that my majors were political science and history, probably about half or a little more were in those departments. Early on, you're taking a lot more distribution requirements. So, I actually took a class with Jules Law, as Alexis mentioned. I took an intro to fiction class, fantastic professor. And I took some, I'm not very much a science person, unlike the 3 psych majors who are with me here. But, I got to take a really cool science class about astrobiology. So really allowing me to take different areas. But now that I'm heading into my 4th year here, really most of my courses will be in political science and history, but I still have some wiggle room. There's a really cool humanities course I want to take, humanities economics, taught by very own Morton Shapiro, the president of the university. So I really want a chance to take that, and just a lot of wiggle room. So it's a really nice balance between taking courses in my majors, but also distribution requirements and getting to explore other areas I'm interested in.
Awesome, thank you. So our next question is about when you decided on your majors. Melana, you have quite a few different areas of academic study and concentration. So walk us through how you arrived at those and how you knew that those were the right things for you, and kind of when you came to that realization.
Yeah, so I came into Northwestern knowing that I definitely wanted to study Spanish in some capacity, thinking I wanted to do a minor. I wasn't really interested in doing a Spanish major because I felt like there were so many other things that I wanted to learn. So I actually came into Northwestern an undecided major, but I was thinking about doing history because history was my favorite subject in high school. And throughout my first year at Northwestern, I thought I wanted to do history, then I thought I wanted to do anthropology, then I thought I wanted to make my Spanish minor into a major, then I thought I wanted to do sociology, and then I landed on psychology. So it was kind of a long journey with that one. And I was really interested. There's a marketing certificate in the Medill School of Journalism that's really popular at Northwestern called the Integrated Marketing Communication Certificate. And I was really interested in doing that. And I started taking the prerequisite classes for that and realized my interests weren't really in marketing as much as they were in business. So thankfully, a lot of those prerequisite classes for the marketing certificate were the same as the prerequisites for the business institutions minor. So at the end of my junior year is when I officially declared my business institutions minor. So you have a lot of time to figure out what you're doing. I mean, as Ethan was talking about with the quarter system and extra classes, you really do have some wiggle room in there. So don't worry if you don't know what you want to study. If you do know what you want to study, that's great. But I mean, there's so many opportunities to add on multiple disciplines of study at Northwestern.
Great. Our next question is about how Northwestern supported my pre-med journey. I'm assuming this is directed at me, given what we've all been studying. But so with that, Northwestern really does have a lot of support systems in place. One of the biggest is, every professor is required to hold office hours. So there are professor office hours. Most of the larger classes, while never taught by a teaching assistant or a TA, will have TAs involved with the course, and they'll often have their own office hours. And so those are even more times during the week, especially if a professor's office hours don't necessarily work for you, to get additional help, to get additional support. There are also, for general chemistry, physics, and organic chemistry, there are tutor rooms. So the teaching assistants will staff a room for I forget the specific hours, and it varies for the different sequence courseworks, but every day of the week, there will be a TA there for at least a couple of hours. And so that's a great time to go and ask questions about class, about the associated lab courses, truly just anything. And it is a really awesome support system that's there for you. There's also peer-guided study groups and peer-guided tutor groups. There's also just a lot of different online resources for students, but most importantly for pre-med specifically, there is the Office of Pre-Health Advising, and there's an entire session on our YouTube page with their office about pre-med and pre-health, and especially what the advising role plays in that process. But I know I met with my advisor multiple times on everything from coursework to MCAT to research to volunteering, because there are quite a few different components involved. And that kind of segues into the second part of the question about studying for the MCAT. So students at Northwestern will do all sorts of different things when it comes to not only studying for the MCAT, but studying for other grad school standardized exams, whether that's the LSAT or the GMAT. And so students will either study over the summer. One of the great things about the quarter system really is that flexibility that it allows, and the fact that if you took a full 4 courses every quarter for 3 quarters for 4 years, you would have 48 classes, and you only need, in the College of Arts and Sciences, 45 credits to graduate. So that could be a quarter where you only took one class, and during that quarter, instead of taking those other 3 classes, you studied for the MCAT. And it really honestly just depends on your timeline, whether you want to study in a shorter period and study more frequently or over a longer time. So that is really kind of a personalized things of how people do it, but there definitely are ways, and a lot of very successful Northwestern students who do study for the MCAT with the quarter system. Our next question is, what opportunities, more specific to majors in Weinberg College, are offered? Sorry, wait, I'm trying to understand the question. What opportunities are offered in Northwestern's area? So hospitals, research labs, kind of different things around here. I will let Melana talk about this if you'd like.
Yeah, so I guess if I'm understanding the question correctly, is what kind of institutions exist surrounding Northwestern with which students can engage if you're in Weinberg and studying something in Weinberg? So like Elizabeth was saying, with kind of like hospitals and things like that, a lot of pre-med students will volunteer at hospitals. One of my friends works as an EMT, which is a really cool experience for her. Kind of veering away from the health side of things, being near Chicago is a really great resource for a lot of students. And I know a lot of my friends who study art history have actually had assignments where they have to go down into Chicago and go to museums, because we have free passes to multiple museums in Chicago by being Northwestern students. And so, I mean, those are just a couple examples. I know, Alexis, you talked about going into a school in Evanston with your psych class. I know people who will go and do volunteer work as part of their coursework. So there really are a lot of opportunities for students to get that kind of extracurricular component of their studies, just because we live in such a great area with Evanston and Chicago right here too.
Awesome. So the last thing that we will talk about for today, I will actually answer. So it's a question about on-campus resources for mental health, studying, and overall just kind of academic balance at Northwestern. And I think this goes back to something that we talked about at the beginning of the session, which is that transition from high school to Northwestern. And so again, something I will emphasize is that college can be really hard, and there are different classes, and you're living alone for the first time. There's doing your laundry. There are lots of things, and I know experience has definitely had just its own personal ups and downs, and I think that's human nature, and that just happens. And so what I will say is that I think it's really just a matter of balance, and a matter of, for me at least, self-care, and a matter of knowing that my first quarter here, I thought if I wasn't studying every minute of every day, I was doing something totally wrong. And I realized after that, after failing my first Gen Chem exam here, that was obviously not a really great strategy for success. So I reevaluated that and realized that studying for shorter time periods, but being more concentrated and actually focused when I study, and not just studying but being on my phone, was way more successful, and allowed me to have really designated times that I took breaks, and those breaks were true breaks where I didn't have to feel guilty about not studying. So that was having dinner with friends, working out, watching Netflix in bed, or just going to sleep early, any one of those things. And I know for me that was really instrumental in just helping to kind of manage my own stress throughout Northwestern, and just kind of balance academics with everything else that was going on for me. So with that, thank you all so much for joining us and for asking all of your questions. Thank you to Alexis, Ethan, and Melana for all of your wonderful answers. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to Northwestern at admsac@u.northwestern.edu. And additionally, you can go to our website to sign up for additional sessions, as well as on our YouTube page. There are so many already recorded sessions that you can watch at your leisure. So enjoy and have a wonderful night. Thank you so much, everyone.